Tonight, you will probably crawl into a soft bed, lock your front door, and completely lose consciousness for 8 straight hours without a second thought. You will do this because your bedroom feels like the safest place on earth. But for hundreds of thousands of years, falling asleep meant volunteering to be the most defenseless creature in a landscape where predators were actively hunting you. When the sun went down for our ancient ancestors, the world didn't just get quiet, it became completely terrifying. We humans have terrible night vision compared to almost every other predator on the planet. We don't have reflective layers in our eyes like cats do. The moment the sun dipped below the horizon, humans were effectively blind, while the animals that wanted to eat us were just waking up. If you were to time travel back 50,000 years, darkness wasn't just an inconvenience, it was a daily crisis. And what early humans did to survive those 12 hours of pitch-black terror ended up completely rewiring our brains, our societies, and even the way you sleep tonight. Let's start with the absolute baseline of ancient survival, the monsters in the dark. For most of human history, humans were not at the top of the food chain, we were prey. There are cave sites in South Africa where archaeologists have found human remains mixed right in with the remains of large cats in the exact same dirt layers. Some of those ancient human skulls have puncture marks in them that match leopard teeth perfectly. Rain and bad weather often drove animals into shelter, and sometimes that shelter was the exact same cave humans were hiding in. It compressed the entire prehistoric world, humans, predators, and prey, into the same small dry spaces at the exact same time. So how do you survive the night when a leopard can see you but you can't see it? The answer, of course, was fire. But having fire and keeping fire are two very different things. There is evidence of controlled fire use going back at least 400,000 years at a site called Kasem Cave in Israel, and possibly as far back as 1,000,000 years at Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa. But here is the catch that history books usually skip. Before roughly 40,000 years ago, we aren't entirely sure how reliably humans could start a fire from scratch. Controlling a fire that already exists and creating one from nothing are two very different skills, and for most of human history, most people probably couldn't do the second one. If your fire went out in the middle of the night, you couldn't just flick a lighter, you were plunged into total darkness. Sometimes ancient people had to transport smoldering coals packed inside a woody mushroom called tinder fungus just to ensure they had a backup. This fungus could catch a spark and smolder inside itself for hours, acting like a biological lighter. Even 500–300 years ago, Ötzi the Iceman carried a complete fire kit in his belt pouch with tinder fungus, flint, and extra plant tinder because losing your fire was a fatal mistake. So as darkness fell, one person's entire job might have been just sitting next to that fire for hours, feeding it dead lower branches from coniferous trees and shielding it with hides. Letting it go out wasn't just careless, it meant the leopard teeth were coming into the cave. But once that fire was roaring and the perimeter was safe, something incredible happened. Ancient humans didn't just go to sleep immediately. The fire created a barrier against the dark, and inside that barrier, they started building the modern human mind. Think about what happens when you put a group of people around a campfire today. The tension drops, people relax. Well, anthropologists actually studied this. In 2014, a researcher named Polly Wiesner spent time with the Jehu Honsi Bushmen in the Kalahari Desert, studying what they talked about. During the day, their conversations were purely practical. They talked about land rights, resources, and everyday complaints. But at night, around the fire, over 80% of the conversation completely shifted. They started sharing stories, songs, and ceremonies. The firelight physically changed the dynamic. It softened faces, reduced tension, and created a space where people opened up. The campfire wasn't just a heater, it was the original social network. When ancient humans sat in the dark, surrounded by a terrifying wilderness, they talked. They shared critical survival knowledge, where the water sources dry up in summer, which plants are safe to eat, and how to track a specific animal. But they also created myths and explanations for the world around them. Every ancient culture on Earth has mythology, and someone had to invent those stories while sitting in the dark, trying to make sense of the universe. This nighttime storytelling was so powerful that some of the oldest known oral traditions, Australian Aboriginal stories describing sea level changes, survived for 7,000 years through nothing but people telling them to each other in the dark. That kind of cultural memory only exists because our ancestors spent enormous amounts of time sitting together at night, retelling stories over and over again. Now eventually the stories would wind down, and it was time to actually sleep. And this is where we have to shatter another massive assumption. You probably think ancient humans just collapsed on the hard dirt. They didn't. They wanted a comfortable bedroom just as much as you do. At Sibudu Cave in South Africa, archaeologists discovered something mind-blowing from 77,000 years ago. They found actual bedding. Ancient humans were carefully arranging layers of sedges, rushes, and grasses into comfortable sleeping mats. And they weren't just just thinking about comfort, they were thinking about pests. The top layers of these 77,000-year-old beds included leaves from a plant called Cape Laurel, which is a natural insect repellent. Someone wasn't just surviving the night in that cave, they were actively making it comfortable and periodically burning and replacing the bedding to keep it clean. 77,000 years ago, people were doing pest control so they could get a good night's sleep. But here is where the evolutionary biology comes in, and it explains a lot about your own habits. Millions of years ago, before we controlled fire, our distant primate ancestors almost certainly slept high up in the trees to avoid predators. But once we tamed fire, we could finally come down and sleep on the ground. However, sleeping on the ground is incredibly dangerous if everyone is unconscious at the same time. Evolutionary biologists believe this is why human sleep is so incredibly deep, yet so fractured. We have the shortest, most efficient sleep cycle of any primate, spending a massive amount of our sleep in deep REM. We had to get our rest efficiently and wake up quickly if danger approached. More importantly, have you ever wondered why you are a night owl but your partner is an early bird? Or why teenagers naturally want to stay up until 3 a.m. while older people wake up at dawn? Scientists call this the sentinel hypothesis. In an ancient hunter-gatherer tribe, it was an evolutionary advantage for everyone to have slightly different biological clocks. If some people naturally stayed awake late tending the fire and others naturally woke up before sunrise, the window of time where the entire tribe was completely vulnerable and unconscious was incredibly small. Your frustrating modern insomnia might just be your brain running an ancient software program, volunteering you to take the night watch to protect your tribe. But ancient humans didn't just hide from the dark, sometimes they sought it out. Think about the most breathtaking prehistoric cave art in the world. The Chauvet Cave in southern France contains stunning paintings of lions, horses, rhinos, and bears that are roughly 36,000 years old. These artists understood anatomy and movement, drawing animals mid-stride with tense muscles. But here is what makes this truly wild. These paintings aren't at the entrance of the cave where the sunlight reaches. They are located deep inside, sometimes hundreds of meters in, through narrow passages and chambers you literally have to crawl to reach. Our ancestors deliberately walked away from the safety of the campfire. They carried animal fat lamps into total suffocating darkness, deep underground, just to paint. You don't do that when the weather is perfect outside. You do that because the darkness gave you a canvas that the daylight couldn't provide. They conquered the dark and turned it into the first art galleries in human history. So what does all of this mean for you tonight? When you get into bed and pull the covers up to your chin, even if the room isn't cold, you are acting out an ancient ritual. That heavy blanket mimics the feeling of safety, of being shielded from the elements and the eyes of predators. When you feel a spike of anxiety because the closet door is cracked open, or when you double-check the lock on your front door, you aren't just being paranoid. You're experiencing 300,000 years of evolutionary survival mechanisms, telling you that the dark is dangerous and you need to secure your perimeter. We solved the problem of darkness so completely with electricity that we forgot it was ever a threat. But your brain remembers. Every time you share a deep late-night conversation with a friend that you would never have in the middle of the day, you are recreating the ancient magic of the campfire. You are tapping into the exact prehistoric social glue that allowed human civilization to organize and survive. Tomorrow morning you'll wake up with the sun, totally safe, but tonight respect the dark. It's what made us who we are. If you found this fascinating, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our next deep dive into the hidden history of the human mind. And hey, if you noticed a gold coin with the face of Socrates hidden somewhere in this video, drop the timestamp in the comments. One random person who gets it right will win a $20 gift card, and I'll announce the winner in the next video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.